Hey, let's play some Balatro. You've probably heard us talking about it offhand on the channel. We haven't really gone in depth on it at all. And I think it's time to show it off. You've probably seen other YouTubers and streamers playing it because it's the new sensation sweeping the nation. I honestly think it's going to get some Game of the Year buzz. I'm not saying it's going to win or anything, but I could see it being nominated at the end of the year. We got some other big heavy hitters coming out later. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth being well received. But still, I think the fact this is basically made by one person and has gone to this height goes to show you that for all the downs of the video game industry right now, there's some pluses too. There's some pluses. We'll talk about what this is in a minute. I'll kind of show it off as we go. So for people who are brand new and seeing this for the first time, we'll walk through it. I'm also going to turn down the speed a bit. I have it on 4 times because that's the way to live. But for newcomers, it might be going a little bit too quick, at least for the first couple antes, and then we'll ramp it up. I think this is going to be multi-parts and just spread throughout the week. I'm going to do a run with more of a basic setup. For reference, and if you're new, you don't even know what the game is, but basically you're trying to make poker hands. It's a roguelike. So we're combining those things into multiple runs and trying to get as deep as we can. So for example, I've been trying to work with some of the decks I've unlocked, like this Ghost deck, because I think spectral cards are fun. And in that one, I've been working my way through the difficulties, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about what each one of these adds, but every time you go up in difficulty, it adds a stacking thing. As you can see, it says applies all previous stakes, and just makes it harder and harder. But in the case of a first run, I'm not going to go super high-end. We'll just, pick something more basic and talk about the game, see how deep we can make it. Go from there. So the yellow deck is one of the default ones. I think maybe the first 1 or 2 are the only ones that were unlocked, and this was just quickly unlocked. But we're starting with 10 more dollars, so we have 14. And our setup is basically on the screen before you. We are looking to play standard poker hands. We have a deck of 52 cards. It looks exactly like you'd expect for now. And we have all these multipliers over here on the left with the blue and the red zeros that have the standard poker hands, things you would expect, and then some non-standard stuff. For example, there are hands that are not on this list that are registered, like a royal flush, which is a normal hand, but also flush 5, when you play 5 of a kind, but it's also the same suit. Or just 5 of a kind, which is not on here. Or flush house, which is a full house, but all the same suit. Say 3 aces of spades and 2 sevens of spades. So we're looking to build those, and we can level up individual hands. We can level up all sorts of things along the way. You'll see how it works, but unsurprisingly, the harder the hand is to play, the more it scores on a base level. To do that, we have a certain amount of hands, which you can see of the blue number on the left, and a certain number of discards, where we can throw away up to 5 cards and draw new ones, trying to make certain hands. I said I was going to slow it down. Let's go do that real quick. We'll start on 1x, and we'll see how long I can tolerate that. We'll do that for at least the first ante, so you can get a feel for what's going on, but then we'll switch it so you can get a feel for how fun it is when it goes quick. All right, let's jump into it. So we have the small blind, the big blind, taking the poker terms, and then the boss blind. You can see coming up ahead, all club cards are debuffed. That means they won't score when we get to that one, but for the time being, we just need to get 300 chips. We also can skip blinds. Sometimes those are going to have really beneficial effects. You can see the one here. If there's a boss blind effect that's like, oh my god, I put a ton of clubs in my deck and now they're all debuffed, you could maybe look to scroll your way out of it. But for the most part, I'm going to be plain, because that's how we get more money. And it also opens up the shop afterwards where we can buy upgrades, more cards, etc. So here we go. We're going to look to build a hand or more that get us to 300 points. But the dirty little secret is you also get $1 for every hand you have left over. And in that case, obviously, even though it's a small difference, in the early going, it's nice if we can get it out in one hand if possible. And we can do that by making either big straights or flushes. So we're going to toss away our non-clubs. Drew 1. I'm going to discard again. We have 2 more to go. We're just looking to hit a decent club. We have enough high ones now, so that's going to be good enough. So after we select the cards, you'll see it's a flush, but it also adds a certain number of chips equivalent to the card's value. So because these are all decently high clubs, this is going to be enough. It's going to add up to something like 80-ish. That times 4 is 320. We're going to beat it. You'll see it now. And the flames come up when you've done enough to score the goal in one hand. Even if it's not the first hand, if you ever get to the point where your stuff goes off and it adds up, you get the flames and you feel good and numbers go big and dopamine go release. Okay, so here's what the shop looks like in between. We have a few different things we can do. Obviously, we can go to the next round. We can re-roll these cards for $5. Sometimes you can make that cheaper or free. These are jokers. They go up in the slot with the 5 up above. And these are essentially what's going to shape how the run goes. The type of jokers we get will ultimately decide, like, okay, what are we trying to get? You know, because right now we can make anything. We can make whatever hands we want. We can make a high card. We can make a straight flush if we're able to do it. But obviously, the higher up we go, the more they're worth. But then again, you know, if we can have an easier time making flushes, the flushes aren't the most valuable. But if we can level up flushes or make them easier to make, maybe that's the direction we go. So right now we have blackboard plus, times 3 mult. If all cards held in hand are spades or clubs, this is a decent one if you can convert it, which we'll see how we can do later. Arcana is one way to do it. If we can make some of the cards in our deck into other suits, we can have an easier time doing that. Or we can try and play the diamonds and hearts and keep clubs and spades in our hand to activate that. Times 3 is pretty good, but we also haven't really shaped our deck yet whatsoever, so it's a tough sell. And then we have Even Steven, a common. When you play 2s, 4s, 6s, 8s, or 10s, plus 4 mult, it's fine, but there's not a whole lot that's really going to go along with that, which is why it's a common. Down here at the bottom, we have booster packs, and there's 2 of these per shop. This is one that gives playing cards, and these playing cards can have all sorts of effects to them, which we haven't seen any of yet, but we'll point out as we go. So it's not just standard cards. There are also fancy ones in there that do more stuff. And then Arcana packs, 1 of 3 tarot cards. These do things like changing the suits of select cards, changing the value. You know, you can make a 4 into a 5. You can see stuff like getting more money. Sometimes you can turn one card into another card. A lot of different effects that we'll see as we go. And finally, we have a voucher. Vouchers are usually permanent effects per run. This is one of them. We get an additional discard, which is handy. It's really hard to imagine a scenario where that's not at least somewhat helpful. Some jokers, for example, you might not want to throw away cards. You want to keep them to build them. So there are some things it could clash with, but by and large, extra discard just helps us get the hands we need. So one other factor in this, and why I'm not just buying stuff and adding stuff, is our money. We have $22. We started with 10 more because of this type of deck. Every time we finish a hand, we get interest up to $25 for $1 for every $5. So right now we're going to get $4 additional dollars based on interest. And since the voucher is here for this entire ante, which is the set of 3 blinds, we might just not buy anything. Now keep in mind, as we look at what's coming up, the next one's 450. As you saw, we made a 300 plus hand just based on the cards themselves without any jokers, fancy cards. Eventually, though, and pretty quickly, we're going to have to get some things going that raise our points. So I can skip this one and not be super scared. Let's see what this speed tag. Yeah, so we haven't, I mean, we would get $5 for skipping that one, but we haven't been skipping lines, so we're not worried about that. So I'm probably not going to buy any of these. I really like tarots, but the problem is we don't have an identity yet. And this is intriguing because there's ways to make it work even before we start converting cards. But I'm not really enthralled with anything that's here, and I'd rather wait to buy this until I've gotten more interest, so we're just going to skip. This is dangerous to do because, again, you need to start accruing things that are going to give you more points, but we're not worried about it in the second round. We got 4 clubs in hand, so we're going to just go for flushes again. A pair, so we could also go that route if we wanted to. We also could play a straight. We have ace 2, 3, 4, 5, but I don't know. It's not going to score a ton, and we have discards to work with. If we do that, I suppose it does allow us to keep the pair. So you know what? I guess I've talked myself into it. Plus, we'll do it for the variety. Now, there's a lot of low cards in this, so it's not going to be huge, but it should set us up still to finish this in 2 hands. Yeah, we'll probably just dig for a flush unless we draw a full house, which we have done. So this is our first time playing that. And you'll see here, 3 9s, 2 7s, so, you know, we're adding 41. Then multiplying it times 4. It's more than enough to put us past 450. So every blind has a set amount of money you get. In this case, it's 4. We get $2 a piece for our remaining hands, and there's the interest we talked about. So $10, we're up to 32. It's typical in these to find the sweet spot of interest and try and hover there until you get late and you start to get desperate or if you're in a spot where you're already desperate. But it's nice to be able to have 25 bucks or so just to keep that money coming in consistently. There's also a voucher that raises that to 50, and then you just raise the floor for that. But all right, let's see what we got here. Okay, so we already have an intriguing one, and now it starts to give us an idea what we might be going for here. First of all, pick photograph. In a face card deck, it can be okay. You can have things that increase face card values or frequencies or turn all the cards into them. But we're most intrigued by the duo. This is a very good early game that doesn't necessarily survive great late, especially in Endless. But it's hard to complain where every time you play anything that has a pair, you get double the mult. And what's nice about this is, obviously that means anything with a pair. So a pair is a pair, two pairs a pair, three of a kind has a pair in it, a full house has a pair in it. You can also find ways to play, say, a 4-card straight. There's a joker that does that. And then if your 5th card has a pair, this still applies even though you're not playing a pair. So there are ways to make this work in almost every situation. Damn near everything you play is going to do it, except maybe most straights and flushes. But even then, you know, for example, I can end up adding cards to my deck. If I have 2 7s of hearts and I play those in a flush, that still applies for this. We also now can have a little bit more guidance on what we're going to do with these. So what we're going to do is we're going to buy this because it's really good. We also may spend a good chunk of our money here just to position ourselves for the future, because I would still probably like to get this discard. If it was number of hands or hand size, it would be automatic, but the discard's still nice. Let's buy our first booster pack and show what that looks like. I'm going to buy a tarot. So what it does is it shows basically a random hand you might draw. Right now our hand size is 8. This is affected by that, so if it went up or down, we would see more or fewer cards. But these all have different effects. So Fool duplicates the last tarot or planet card. Planet cards boost our hand types. Tarots are what we see. We haven't played one yet, so this is useless to us right now. It would copy whatever the last one was. Here we have a random joker, which is not bad for right now. We'll probably end up taking it. Empress allows us to build mult cards, so basically it applies that to the playing card. So when we play it, we get its value and also +4 mult. But in this case, we're going to roll the dice on a joker, because again, the Fool is useless to us right now, and Empress is but we don't really still have a great idea what we're gunning for. You're like, well, you just bought a joker. Yes, but we can make pairs out of everything in our deck equally. We're going to lean towards aces and face cards because they're worth the most chips, but we still don't really know, like, okay, we have a really fancy jack of diamonds. We're going to try and make jacks happen more or whatever. So let's see. This also might inform that decision. That is an interesting one. This is Sixth Sense. And you can see what it says. If the first hand you play is just a 6, just by itself for high card, we destroy that 6 and we make a spectral card. Spectral cards are really powerful. They're like tarot cards, but even better for the most part. But what's nice is we have 4 6s in our deck that we can do this with. And keep in mind, this is, I think, the biggest thing people struggle with when they first start out with roguelikes, especially card ones. Sometimes it's not about adding. Sometimes the best thing you can do is remove. So if I'm going to be looking to build, say, a bunch of aces and face cards, I don't really want to draw these 6s later on. I'm trying to get to my core stuff, the high-value cards, the stuff I've made fancy. So sometimes it's just as good, if not better, to remove things as it is to add. In this case, we get to do a little bit of both. So this is a nice find. This gives us some direction, and some of the spectral cards are really powerful. One of them, for example, makes all the cards that you draw in your little 8-card sample into the same rank or suit. In this case, we're looking for more of the same rank because of the duo. We're going to be trying to play full houses and the like later. But there's some really powerful stuff that, again, it's about shaping your run. It's about what direction the things you're given makes you take going forward. So now we have some decisions to make. We got 20 bucks. We do want to at least keep some interest to keep the juice flowing. So while both of these are tempting, I don't think I'm going to buy both. And in fact, knowing that we're going to be generating some spectral cards that hopefully give us direction, we're just going to pull this. We're going to want to get 6s in our first hand as much as possible. It's going to be easier up front, but then as we destroy the 6s, it's going to be harder to find them. So we're going to take this discard. Now we have 4 every time. And we're going to proceed with our 10 bucks, so we have 2 bucks of interest. Now, at 600, we're still not worried about it, even if we didn't have any viable jokers yet, or say it was this one, but, you know, it's not for scoring, it's for other stuff. 600 we can make in 3 hands, as you've noticed, maybe even 2 if they're good enough. But in this case, we got exactly what we wanted. So you can see the effect here, by the way. The boss blind is doing club cards are debuffed. So that's why all the clubs in my hand have X's on them. They will not score. They can still be used in combinations. So if I played the 2 8s and the 2 3s, you'll see it's still 2 pair. But this individual card won't get the 3 chips. If I played an entire hand of them, so if I drew for a 5th club and then played a flush, then it wouldn't score at all. So this can be devastating depending on what effect, what suits, what cards it hits. For us, we're not super worried, and this should, as far as I know, still work for triggering 6th Sense. So we're going to do that. So we only get $5 for that because it didn't score individually. So we just got the base level. So again, if we played a flush, we'd get the 30 times 4 for 120, but we'd get absolutely nothing else for it if it was clubs. But in this case, it got us a spectral card. And this is the one we talked about. This makes everything into one suit. Now, I can play this right now. If it turns everything into clubs, I'm going to have to start discarding to get them out of my hand because that's going to be bad. If it turns everything into something else, then we should be able to just play a flush right away, and that flush can contain a pair because it's going to have 2 8s and 2 3s and 2 2s in it. So we're going to play this. We're not really going for flushes with this build that we have in mind right now, but we're also not so committed to the duo that we're stuck with it. You know, it's not like, well, we drew that, so now we got to play pairs all the time. We could find other stuff that then dictates where we go. So let's see what this does. If it's clubs, we're going to be a little sad. It's not. So what we're going to do is basically just play a flush. But that flush has a pair in it, so we'll watch what happens here. So it made our mult pretty juicy. And if I'd really been a stickler for stuff, I could have then, you know, I could have gone the approach where it's like, okay, let me draw for some higher spades now and to get this done in one hand. That's how you can really micromanage this and min-max, but instead, we don't only need 27 points. We could play damn near anything, but this hand certainly contains a pair. Let's play it. Beat our boss blind, advance to the next ante. You can hear the soundtrack there, by the way. Kind of shifts and alters based on where you're at, what packs you're opening, what blinds you're fighting. It's a similar song, but as a friend of the show Nick pointed out, it's pretty lo-fi and chill, and it's great for the background. I really like it. We have some decisions to make again, so let's take a look at what we have. Plus 10 mult if the played hand contains a flush. Well, as we look at our deck now, for the first time we can see the changes. We turned everything into spades, so we have 20 of those, and you can see them at the top. And a little bit more sparse offerings the rest of the way. We also destroyed the 6 of clubs, so that's gone. But again, this is not a very good flush card. I mean, it's fine. There's a couple of really good ones, but we're not really leaning that direction. We also have a spectral pack. You saw what one of the spectral packs was. And we have, for the first time, a buffoon pack to choose jokers. Now again, the tempting thing would be like, buy everything, because this voucher is pretty good. Especially if we're thinking long-term. Those effects, by the way, foil and holographic add like multiplier and stuff like that, or chips, just to the value of the joker. So every time you play a hand, those get added. Polychrome multiplies by 1.5, so it's very good. We would like this as well for the long term. It doesn't really help in the short term, so I'm probably not going to buy it this turn, but I might in the next couple. Instead, what I think I'm going to do is buy a spectral pack, because the effects can be so big. It's also tempting to buy, we get to choose 1 out of 4 in this case, so that's tempting, but let's go here first. Not quite getting the one we're looking for. So we have Cryptid, which is probably the one we'll play just in the pursuit of full house type hands. So we can take, this Queen of Clubs and have 2 more of them now. We put them in the deck. We also have Deja Vu, which is a red seal. Probably the best kind of seal. Seals are like little chips that go on top of the card, and they have their own set of effects. Some let you get taros when you discard, some get you money when you play them. This one allows you to re-trigger cards, which is handy because not only does it re-trigger them when you play them, but some hand effects can also reapply. The tricky thing here is we would really like to have a spade face card in hand right now. Ideally, that's what I would build towards, because then we're not only making more face cards for full houses and getting more copies of them, but also increasing our spades at the same time. We do have, let's see, 2 8s, 2 7s. We have the 9 and the 6 of spades in our hand. So you could also like fish for more straight flush type possibilities. Again, we don't have anything that's building towards that, but it's a possibility. So this is a little bit of a pickle, because either way, we don't really have a card among these 8 that we're super excited to turn these things into. I think because it's early, and because I know there are jokers that will play off of queens and or kings especially, but I think we're going to take 2 more of these queens of clubs. It's always possible that later on we could turn those into spades. There's a lot of different options here. And now, for the sake of interest, we're probably going to shut it down. This would take us to 8, which is 1 less interest. This, obviously, would take us to 4, which is 2 less interest. And while we want to buy this, we'll probably save for it. So let's keep going. Now you can see we're escalating. We need 1,600 to beat the hook, and it has its own effect that you can see there. Discards 2 random cards per hand played. We also need to double check these just to see. In this case, a holographic joker is certainly nice, but not what we're looking for right now. This one, if we skipped, would give us more money later, but let's just jump into it. Okay, so in a hand like this, we have some options. We have a 2-pair thing we could try to draw to a full house. We also know we have a bevy of spades coming. In fact, we can see now at a glance how many more spades are left in the deck to come. We have 17 of them, so the chances are pretty high. We also have 2 of our 6s, and we still have 6 cents triggered. So I think the thing that makes the most sense is just to play one of those and get it out of the hand, and then decide what we want to discard from there. It does sort of break up any 2-pair strategies, but we probably weren't going to do that right now. Anyways, let's see what spectral card we get to. Okay, so as you can see here, polychrome, powerful. Anything that's multiplicative is really important for the later parts of this, the last antes, as well as endless mode, trying to go as big as you can, because it's parabolic. It really ramps up towards the end, and you need stuff that multiplies to really keep up. We could play this right now, but it's a risk. If that puts polychrome on 6 cents, I'm going to be sad. Right now, although we could add more 6s maybe, right now we only have 2 left. Because we're showing remaining, but there's the 6 of hearts, and of course the 6 of spades. So eventually we're probably going to look to sell this once it's done its purpose. So if this puts polychrome on that, we'll be sad. We want polychrome on this. Now, we just managed to trigger this for the second time. As mentioned, we only have 2 6s left, so we'll probably try to sell this and then apply this so that there is no other joker to destroy. It just puts polychrome on this. For the time being, though, it doesn't really help us at this moment, so we're just going to discard all of our non-spades. Now, what we would like to do is draw into one of our pairs of spades, which we have several of now. So I think what we're going to do is discard again. We have many discards, and there's no real harm in doing it. There are a couple setups that will reward you for having more discards at the end, but right now we don't have any of those. Okay, we didn't draw any spades. Okay, we've done it. Let's keep the king of spades so we have a pair, and we're going to play the 2 2s of spades to trigger the duo. Oh yeah, I need to speed this up too. I will do it after this hand. We'll go 2x so you can see that, and maybe we'll go 4 by the end. I appreciate that people like to go fast on this. I am also one of them, but I will also say, you know, we're trying to talk about it as we go. It's not just play quick, go fast, wow. 571, so a decent-sized flush will put us over whether or not it triggers the duo. We don't really have great pair configurations right now, so I think we're just going to spend our last discard hoping to dig for one more spade. And instead, look what we've done. How we have 2 different ways we could play it. There's the flames we talked about. That's 800 on its own without adding the chips. One thing to keep in mind, too, is that when you go back to the run info and look at the hand values, you can see how many times you've played it. It's on the right-hand column there. Played 3 flushes so far, 2 full houses. About to play our first straight flush. We're just going to do that. And before we do it, just to make it go quicker, 2x. You can see what that looks like. This is one of those examples. This hand doesn't have a pair in it, but like whatever. It's a straight flush, so it's really good. Now, thing to keep in mind, we are having to burn one hand on 6 cents. So that's why we're not getting quite as much money as we normally would. We're wasting a hand to activate these effects, so it's good. All right, let's see what we got here. Odd Todd, the opposite of Even Steven. You saw him earlier. 13579. Riff Raff is not bad to have early. You can see what it does. So basically when you start the next challenge, you get 2 common jokers. Common jokers, as you would probably think from the name, not usually superstars, but they can certainly help. And in the early going, we don't have a lot of jokers anyways, so it's kind of a chance just to cycle through them. You can also sell them. So, worst case scenario, you can be like, those aren't very good. You get a little bit of money out of it. We might consider that. But the reason we're hesitating is because we're still thinking about this. If I buy that, that's one more target for destruction. And one more thing, we don't really want to have polychrome, because even if we do buy this, we will not be keeping it beyond the 5th or 6th ante, most likely. Because at that point, its value will have waned, and we'll just want to have good jokers and not random commons. So essentially, what I'm having to do is make a decision about this right now, if I want to buy this. If I'm going to sell this, I got 2 spectral cards out of it, so I feel like I've gotten some good worth. We got this for free out of a random joker, and it does sell for 3. We do have a first Celestial pack down here, which is planet cards. We haven't seen those yet, but basically they level up different hand types, like flush, full house, whatever. They get the multiplier and the base rate bigger. And of course, we're still considering this, because long term, those are nice to have as options. So, this is where it gets interesting. This is where the strategy comes in. What do you want to do? How quickly do you want to ramp up? Do you want to play it safe? Do you want to risk stuff? I would like to get those other 6s out of my deck. Of course, the 6 of spades we don't mind as much. But ultimately, again, we're not looking at this for flushes in the long haul. We're hoping to find more things for full houses or flush houses. I'm also tempted just to open an Arcana pack first and see what we get. There are some things that could manipulate 6s that way. I think I'm going to do that. So let's see what we get here. Okay, so we have some options here. Let's look at them so you can see what I'm looking at. Death, one of my favorites, especially when you get later in a run, you start having some really high value cards in the deck. Just turn one card into another one. Hangman destroys 2 cards, so when we're looking to thin the deck like we talked about, it's a great way to do it. If we have a ton of face cards and we're trying to make full houses, we don't want to draw 3s and 2s. We could destroy the 2 we have in our hand right now. And Empress we've seen before, Molt. Now we have an interesting development going here in that we already made 3 Queens of Clubs. So we could just turn something else into a Queen of Clubs. Kind of runs against the spades we're doing, but not necessarily. If we turn the 3 of diamonds into a club, we could try and get spades and clubs. Ironically, if you think back to the very first shop, we had that joker that played off of that well, but never really know which direction you're going to take. I do think the best value we can get is probably just turning this 3 into a Queen of Clubs. You can argue we could put Molt on like the Queen and Jack of Clubs or something, but I think we're just going to go this route. Get the most queens we can going. And just as a reminder, because I think everybody's made this mistake once and then learn from it, convert the left card into the right. So we're going to turn this into that. Now that hasn't really told me what I want to do with Hex. I think we have to hold off. I'd like to get rid of at least one more 6. Ideally the 6 of hearts. Before we jettison this joker. If we don't buy any of the jokers, we can still hold off and keep this same plan going. This is nice, but not something I feel like I have to have. And I think as we look ahead, like discards 2 random cards, and it's fine. And we can still buy the voucher next time. So we'll hold off on it to get more interest. I think we're going to move on right now. Well, this is an interesting situation. 3 8s, so we're close to a full house. We know we have more queens in the deck. In fact, it'll show us here. 6 queens left to draw. We don't have a lot of spades anyways, so we might just discard the Jack 9 and Deuce, draw to a queen, or the last 8, that'd be fine. Or to draw a random, I didn't say the 4, or to draw like a random pair among the 4 cards we get. So we'll try that first. This also allows us to fish for a 6. Okay, we didn't really get either. We do have a flush in hand, but again, flushes they're fine. We haven't done anything to make them better though, so 35 times 4 is only 140, and yes, we would add some stuff. It'd end up being like 280. But as you can see, we got to score 1,200, and we only have 4 hands. If one of them is going to be a 6, we got to score about 400 per hand. We don't have the luxury of basically looking at it like, we'll just play a flush. Like, you could, and make up for it later, but I think we're just going to discard again. Again, looking for queens, other pairs, or 6. Okay. The fates are not shining upon us, but it's fine. We'll do it again. Okay. So now, because we only have 1 discard left, I don't think we have the luxury of fishing for one of our 2 6s. It's the downside of this as you destroy more, like we talked about. I'm going to play this and get some good value out of it. So that gets us more than halfway there. But it does leave us in a bit of a pickle. So, 1 discard left. We have no pairs in hand. This is where we could try and pivot to spades. Now, there are 2 deuces of spades left. Another 7 of spades, 2 more 10s of spades, so we can still try and get flushes that have a pair in them. We'll also have a backup plan if we don't draw what we're looking for here. So this is our last discard. We're going to do that. Oh, that's a nice draw. I don't know if that's enough. It's going to be close enough that it doesn't really matter. In fact, I'm going to leave the pair of 7s there of spades just to give us the most options here. I guess we could do some quick math. So it's going to be 41. So 76 times 4, which is 304, times 2 again. So it is enough. Obviously, as you start getting a lot more complicated, that math might get tricky. The ordering of things matters. You'll see how much this can start chaining here as we get deeper. But this is enough, so we're just going to go ahead and play it. No problema. Made it for our bad draws with a good one. That's nice because it gives us 2 hands left. We love that extra $1. $9. Okay. Here's a mega standard pack. You get 2 out of 5 playing cards. First time seeing that. We have a tarot card showing up here. Lucky cards you can see on the left. There are ways to increase this chance. Sometimes it's by doubling the activation, like a red seal. Sometimes there's cards that raise the chance, like 2 and 5. But that's not really a high priority for us right now. And then this is fine. Problem is we're looking to play our face cards more often than anything, and we do have a few more to discard where that could trigger, but no. The thing we're trying to be mindful of here is I would like this voucher. That takes us to $15, and as we look at the blinds, we need 1,600 to beat the hook. And it's going to be harder to keep hands behind because whatever 5 cards we play, it's going to discard 2 of the 3 other cards. I think what I'm going to have to do is buy the voucher and hang on to this for now. In a perfect world, what we do is we start with an activation, we destroy 1 more 6, and then we sell it and get this active to make this basically a ×3 multiplier. Now, we can probably win it without it, but if we are going to play a 6 for this, it's going to leave us with 3 hands to make 1,600, so we have to be a little bit careful. And I do want to get this. So I think that's the approach we're going to take. Obviously, it's always tempting to look at Arcana packs. I like them quite a bit. Some people prefer the planet approach. That's fine, too. I think this is all we're going to do. This leaves us a little bit exposed, but I'm not too worried with the extra discard in play. And in some ways, that can benefit us if we don't like the cards that are sticking in our hands. Gives us a free opportunity to get rid of them. We got our perfect scenario here. We not only got a 6, but we got a 6 of hearts. So first thing we're going to do is play that, and we're going to see where we go from there. This is a nice draw. You can see what it does, and there's the 3 effects all in one place. This is just going to increase the value of something. I think a decent target's that Queen of Spades, because we have queens and spades. So there's a lot of value there. This would be really nice to stick on something that had like a red seal or whatever, if we'd put a red seal on something earlier. But because we're looking to make sure we make it through this, I think we're just going to put this on the Queen of Spades immediately. Because we're going to be playing that in some capacity. We got to decide what to do yet. We do have a flush, but no pair. Now, because we've destroyed a 3rd 6, I think it's time to go here and get rid of it. We could still destroy the 6 of spades or add more. And now's our chance to finally activate Hex. There's how cool the polychrome looks. Ooh. And again, now we have a base, like we have a multiplier on a multiplier, which is nice. We need to get more jokers now because we've been a little light on them to this point because of Hex, but now we can fill them in without worrying about it. So that 1.5 is going to trigger no matter what. It's not based on the effect. It just happens as part of scoring. But we still need to look to try and play, you know, some flushes with pairs if we can, or a full house. So I think we're going to be discarding a decent chunk of this here. Maybe even the 4 spades or the jack, because we don't have any more of those. We have more 3s of spades and another 8 of spades. So we're probably just going to go... I mean, we'll keep the jack because it's higher value, right? Like, that just makes sense. Or maybe toss both. I think that makes sense. We have a lot of discards left, so we can be a little greedy right now. Okay. Didn't really draw anything that we love, if we're just being honest, you know. This is where, you know, you could keep the kings and try and make some full house hands, but we haven't even pulled a second queen yet, so I think we're better off just sticking to the game plan. The game plan's not working especially well, but, you know, that happens sometimes. We do have more 2s of spades in the deck, so that gives us a little more clarity on what to draw for here. Well, look at this pickle. Lots of things going on here, and, you know, we gotta go millionaire style and talk our way through it. We have an open-ended straight draw. We're not really looking to play straights, but we have this 5-4-3-2 sitting over here. Obviously, we all know we have 3 of a kind. We have a flush in hand right now. Obviously, those 5 there would make a flush, but there's no pair in that. We have 1 discard left. And the trick is, let's say I wanted to play the flush. Because, oh, I got a pair of queens left behind, I got more queens to draw. Yeah, but we're going to discard 2 cards. So at least 1 queen is gone. There's no world in which we're not playing this. We need that to multiply. In fact, you can argue, because that has plus 10 mult. I mean, let's look at it this way. Let's do some math in our head. This is a flush. It has 28 points worth of value, so it's 63 times 4. 63 times 4 is 252, but it's not 63 times 4, it's 63 times 14. And then that's going to multiply, and it's going to multiply. So if that's basically times 3, now it's 63 times 42, and in my head, guess what? That's 2,400 plus. So we're just going to play this, because we don't want to waste any played hands. We don't need to be greedier, I don't think. It just should be enough if I've done the math right. And if I haven't, it's going to be very embarrassing. Oh, but it didn't have a pair in it. That's the embarrassing part. See, there you go. This is why when people watch along, you can just kind of scream at home, you know, like, what are you doing? It's fair. We got 2 queens left, so we could try and draw to a full house, but then, I think we're at the point where, you know, 2 more hands with pairs in them should be safe. We don't have any more aces left. Some 8s, 10, 4. I'm going to toss 2 of those anyways. And keep in mind, you can also play a 5th card. If it's not part of the hand, so the ace is not part of 2 pair, it won't score, but it's a way to get more cards effectively. So I think we're just going to play this, see what we draw. We have a discard left to make sure we get a pair. But we don't need it. All right, so there you go. Screwed up because I'm talking through too much stuff. Very embarrassing.